Oh, welcome in to the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And I'm joined, as always, by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man. That was a smooth intro if we've ever done one. You know what?
I'm just going to let you guys know this took 20 minutes to get to this point. So I was ready. I said, Mike called, says, you ready? I said, absolutely. Then the memory card's full. Then the camera's not lined up. Then this damn mic's not even plugged in. It's one thing after another, but we're ready to rock and roll, baby. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how we get there. You know, it's like an ugly victory. You don't care as long as you win.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, brother, I got a little surprise for you. You can't see it, but if you're watching on YouTube, you can. Dead center in the middle of the screen now. I have in my hands here, Shane, some of these exclusive Luther Burden potato chips. And we're going to display these bad boys the entire football season. I got to give a shout out to Brett Monroe. Shane sent us a couple bags of these.
Come on now.
He sent two, and one, like I said, is going to be on display, so I ain't opening it. And the other one, I don't feel right about eating it without you. I was hoping to get it for the Mizzou opener, but I'm sure we'll do another in-person podcast before long, and we'll dive into these bad boys. But just want to say thanks again to Brett for sending us these chips. And, man, we encourage anything and everything to be sent us, and we'll throw it up here. And I mean, if you want to send us food, if you want to send us a cowbell, if you want to send us a truck, whatever it is, we will happily accept it on this show. You know what?
Absolutely. Add it to the set. You know, we got Hefty Lefty up there. You know, that was sent in by a fan. And you know, this is a pod that was grown by you guys and girls. So, you know, anything that you could send, that's cool because we're just going to incorporate it in the show. Yeah,
and we're going to talk some Missouri football here in just a second, Shane. But had to start with this. This is one of these clips that... you know, a little upset that it happened so late after we recorded yesterday because we would have led with it last time. Brian Kelly, man, getting trolled a little bit here in his recent media availability. We're just going to play this intro, and just to set it up, you kind of really got to listen to what this reporter says, but he's making fun of her for walking into the press conference a little bit late. Let's kick it over to Brian Kelly.
So, with that, we'll open it up to this late arriving media crowd that must have enjoyed the weekend. That's usually $10 that we put in the kitty. We'll have a big bash at the end of the year at my place.
So maybe if you win, I'll be on time.
I don't think it has anything to do with winning. I think it has to do with being on time.
All right, Shane, so just in case you didn't catch that, what she said, I'll show up on time if you win. Now, we got to say this too, Shane. She has clarified she was just joking, and she only said that because Brian Kelly was clearly joking about fining her for being late. So, I mean, this is not a thing to be read into to where, you know, the media's out there firing Brian Kelly and they're running him out of town or anything like that. But it's just when you're the only damn team that lost in the SEC, this is just going to hit a little bit harder. You know what?
I don't know, man. My wife's made a couple of these comments. She's apologized for it later, you know. we just messing around, ain't we? You know? Yeah, sure, honey, but that really hurt. It doesn't matter. So, but no, this is obviously this thing went viral, still going viral. So we obviously wanted to address it. Again, nothing there. She comes out later, apologized. She even, if you get onto our TikTok there, she goes on to explain that they had conversations after the press conference and stuff like that. So I think there's no news here, but it definitely was fun when it happened, man.
Yeah. All right, Shay. Hey, we got a couple games to break down, but I do want to give a shout out. We've got a pair of guests on this show, Shane. Some really outstanding stuff from our friends John Nabors. He's the host of Locked On Razorbacks podcast and the host of Out of Bounds on 103.7 The Buzz. He's going to talk the South Carolina game. And then we got the great JC Shurburtt, owner of the Big Spur, host of Inside the Gamecocks. He is also going to preview the Arkansas game. So we're you see what we're doing here? We're hitting it from both sides. So we're going to play those interviews at the tail end because we went on a deep dive already on South Carolina, Arkansas. But right now, Shane, I want to talk some Texas A&M football because, like I've said on previous shows, man, this fan base, they're ready to run my ass out of town if I ever come down here to College Station. But the Aggies, Shane, they have a real opportunity to make amends this week against an Appalachian State team that damn near knocked off North Carolina on the road last weekend to open the season. And, really be having my eyes on Haynes King and how he looks a little bit more comfortable in this offense. I have been able to go back and watch the Sam Houston game. They certainly did make some adjustments in the second half of that game, and the running game was far more effective in the second half. But what are you going to be looking for from the Aggies? Because, I don't think it's any surprise we're going to be picking the Aggies to roll.
Right.
But we need to see it this time. So what will your eyes will be on for the Appalachian State game?
Well, I mean, let's face it, the opponents should be a little tougher than Sam Houston. So we can't afford a sluggish, slow start. I think come out with confidence, guns a-blazing, establishing the run early. This is something they had trouble doing last week. You will have the most dominant line of scrimmage in this game. Take advantage of that. Lean on those big uglies up front. I want to see Ah-Chang get more involved. I want to see a lot of touches here. I've touted him as a dark horse Heisman candidate. You ain't going to do it if you're getting less than 100 yards on Sam Houston. So that's what I want to see is just, the progression of Haynes King going into week 2. I want to see this running game get established, and I want the defense to keep doing what they're doing, and that is going to just disrupt and manhandle App State.
Yeah, so let's kick it over to Jimbo real quick, Shane, talking to Haynes King, and they still want him to be aggressive despite the fact that he has turned the ball over a number of times in his starts here. Appalachian State with a veteran squad. He calls it a Power 5 team here. He's hyping up all their opponents, isn't he?
Oh, God.
And getting the ground game going. So let's kick it over to Jimbo.
Jimbo, I know at this time Haynes is already kind of a veteran, at least as far as being part of the program and working with him. But is he one of those guys that you have to either dial back the risks that he takes, or is he a guy that you have to kind of help?
Well, you just keep molding. You don't want to say, you'd rather say whoa than giddy up. I mean, you say, okay, intercept, but you can sit there and not make plays. I also made a ton of plays. We had how many balls down the field? Long balls. I mean, plays, big plays, and that's what you got to do. And listen, you can, would they say whoa to Brett Favre? They asked him, don't throw so many rocket balls. Ain't that what it was on TV? And they say, please, is that all with rocket balls now or whatever? But he didn't throw it. I mean, listen, he took a chance down the field on a safety that spun out. He's got to learn at that depth he can't do it. And two guys on, you got to get a horizontal stretch on a guy or allow the corner to play. And that was a little bit on our part. But again, what I say as a quarterback, you're their mother. And what your mother does, you clean everything up around. When some guy makes a mistake and things ain't right, you're getting out of that play, you're going to the next read, all that. That takes some time to see. But at the same time, he's got to get game experience. He's got to be in the saddle and see it. But at the same time, he made tons of plays. And we're going to eliminate those back. But we still have to be aggressive. You have to play with aggressive intelligence in what you do.
Jimbo, you said that Appalachian State could play in a Power 5, and they're just
in any league, in our league, and anybody's league. I mean, you look. I don't mean to get off that. I was going to talk about them. You talk about their offense. Chase Bryce has been there 6 years. Set the school record last year, and he lit it up last week. I mean, 6 touchdowns. Receivers can run. The backs. I mean, the young man from Noel from down in Northwestern can fly. Peoples is a big physical back. Receivers, Deshaun, they can play. Tight ends, experienced. Scored a touchdown right off the bat. They pop runs on third down. Their ability. I'm going to tell you what else you look at their roster. Defensively, 9. The outside backer is going to be a high draft pick. Inside 99 is a great player. 8 can run. Secondary, 7, 6 is all-conference player. And if you look, they're 4th, 5th, and 6th-year guys. I didn't know those still existed. I kept looking at that roster, 4th-year guy, 5th-year guy, 6th-year guy. I said, daggone. I mean, when you get to that point, you watch that team, and they were a top 5 special teams team in the country a year ago. This team can play in any league, have great players, have gotten a few transfers in, but have recruited well. They believe, they have a culture there. And I'm going to tell you, this is an excellent, excellent football team that can play on all sides of the ball. I really am. I didn't mean to interrupt that on you, but please.
No, that answered my question, but I also wanted to ask about how much emphasis are you going to put this week on getting the running game going and A-Chain and just the
we will. No, I mean, we're going to have to run the football. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we're going to run the football. We got to get synchronized and get things together and get the 5 guys all executing together. I mean, and 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, and the second half we did a much better job of that. But we got to get that going to get the plays we need to get. Because listen, we got to get Six some space. You get him some space, good things happen to you, and that's going to be always an emphasis. And always will be. No matter if we ran a lot, we got to get better.
I do want to make this point, Shane, because I read really good article. I retweeted it from the website Good Bull Hunting. Former Texas A&M quarterback Jake Hubenak was the author of that magazine or that article, and he just talked about Haynes King and how it was clear in that opener they were really forcing the issue, wanting him to push the ball down the field, and it led to some big plays, but it also led to some big mistakes. So maybe they went into that Sam Houston game saying, well, it don't matter if we throw a couple picks, we're going to run this damn team off the field.
Yeah.
Let's get this chemistry going with the receivers. So maybe that's a little bit of what happened there with Haynes King. But, I mean, it's 5 turnovers in 2 starts for Haynes King against garbage teams. He's got to stop throwing the ball to the other team.
Well, and he needs to build confidence. And you do that by keep winning and reducing those turnovers and keep making the big plays. So, maybe we came out of this wrong. I mean, Jimbo, you heard him there comparing him to, I don't know if I'm quite ready to compare him to Brett Favre, but, there was times that, similar to Brett, that gunsling mentality, they said, did that cost us a game? But then there was a lot of times you said, did he win us that game? And I think that's what we need here. We need an X factor for Texas A&M at quarterback. It's not. This is a program that has potential to win the SEC. This has the potential to get to a college football playoffs. I know they stumbled out of the gates, and I gave them a hard time, but you do that by creating quarterback play from Haynes King that's above everyone else in the SEC, or at least comparable to some of the bigs. So you got to do that through practice. This is a guy we've touched on has not had a lot of opportunities. So it's basically a glorified scrimmage, and this will be a scrimmage as well. Yeah. There's no reason Texas A&M should lose this game, even if Haynes King comes out with 5 picks. They should still win this game. I'm not saying that's what we want, but again, if he can stair step into the following week and progress into that quarterback we know he can be, then I think Texas A&M will be in good shape. So I'm not worried about it. I am tired of Jimbo talking about these other damn teams, though. I wish my wife loved me as much as he loves his opponents. Yeah,
and one final thing on this matchup, Shane. I know, college football does not work this way. You can't just say, well, Appalachian State faced North Carolina, and here's what North Carolina did, so A&M should do it. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily work that way, but
no.
Regardless, I'm going to throw out these stats, Shane. This is North Carolina rushing total against Appalachian State last week, 215 yards on the ground, 6.1 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. So this is not an Appalachian State defense that should be able to hold A&M. And also their quarterback for North Carolina, Drake May, he's a freshman, threw for 352 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, I'm not saying Haynes King has got to come out here and match these incredible numbers, but if he's throwing multiple interceptions and not throwing a bunch of touchdowns, we got a problem on our hands.
Absolutely, man. This should not be a ball game. Are we doing a score on this one?
No.
Because I did. I still think I'm hoping that we don't have a sluggish start, but that's the big thing. You asked what I'm looking for here. Just please God, just come out 2-3 consecutive drives and get a touchdown. Yeah. You have it, Texas A&M. You can do this. So that's what I want to see is 21-0 after 3 drives.
All right, Shane, I said we're going to talk some Missouri football. They have got a pivotal matchup here this weekend going on the road to Kansas State. This is not a garbage program by any means. They beat LSU last year in the bowl game. Of course, that was, you got to put an asterisk next to that because LSU had about half a football team for that game. But they beat Mississippi State in recent years. I know you know that because you bet on Mississippi State in that game. This is a program that can play with SEC teams. And this is one where Missouri, I think in many years past, this is an automatic loss for you. But with an improved Missouri squad, with talent at the receiver position, with the defense now number one in the nation, Shane, in defending the run after last year being a nightmare defending the run.
Yeah.
There's a real possibility that Missouri goes on the road and earns a win, and that would just be huge for their season if they can start 2-0, don't you think?
Oh, I think it'd be very, very huge, Mike. And you know, out of all the programs, I think that had to work on things after week one, Missouri wasn't as far up there, in my opinion. I thought this defense was great. I thought the secondary, especially the way they swarmed to the ball, I think they're going to find some more creative ways to give our chip man some more opportunities to touch the ball. But, you know, this running game was impressive. There was a lot of great things that came from Mizzou. Was it sluggish? Was it, you know, was there a couple of just stupid penalties? Absolutely. But I think everybody had that week one. If Mizzou comes out and plays SEC football, man, there's no reason we should lose this game.
Yeah, and I said Missouri's got the number one rushing defense. I believe the number is 6. They allowed 6 rushing yards to Louisiana Tech, so that's how you're number one. But this Kansas State team, Shane, they played a joke of a team, but they rushed for 297 yards. They've got a really good running back in Deuce Vaughn, so that's going to be critical. They blocked the first play of scrimmage, they 75-yard rushing touchdown. They blocked a punt for a touchdown. So, I mean, it was over early for them in the opener. But they were only 5 of 14 on third downs, and they got like 50 passing yards. So this is a team I think Missouri can really take advantage of, even though the fact that this is on the road. There's no reason I don't think that Missouri can go on the road and not win this game. I think they've got a real chance of starting the year 2-0.
Yeah, I do too. I just hate that it is away. You know, obviously this was one of those 1-1 deals, but you know, I hate that fact because I really think a home field advantage could have helped them out here. Second off, they're underdogs. I think, what are they, 8-point underdogs in this thing? You know, so the country does not think that Mizzou should win this ball game, and you and I are on the different. I think the way it sounds, but. To do that again, it's. I'm hoping that week one wasn't wasn't fake. What do they call it? Fugazi. That's what I hope is that this running defense is legit, because they're going to have a huge test this week, and I think that's why they were able to just take care of business last week, because they made that team one-dimensional. So can they do that with Kansas State? That's my only worry with Mizzou. And I think after 2 weeks, we're going to know exactly what this team is going to represent moving forward.
And so it's a whole new test and opportunity. And, going on the road and playing in front of what's the capacity of the stadium? I'm sorry, Mom.
It's 50,000.
And going and playing in front of 50,000 who really don't like you is going to be a whole lot of playing in front of 50,000 who do. So, all that stuff's kind of out the window. And again, he's a young player. He's got a lot of talent and ability, but let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. This is going to be a big test for him and all of us this week going on the road and playing in this environment.
Eli, when it comes to scheduling a Power 5 outside of the SEC, is this ideal for you?
I'm not getting in trouble this year. Yeah, I mean, I think there's things that I feel a lot more confident in. I think there's also things that are of concern that have to get fixed. I think the best thing that I've seen about this team is their hunger to improve and their willingness to open themselves up to critique, to ignore the noise and the pats on the back and, hey, we've arrived. We ain't done nothing, all right? We're 1-0, which is exactly what we want to do. But what happened last week, they don't carry any of those points over. They don't carry any of those stats over. They don't carry any of those turnovers over. This is a brand new week with a whole different set of challenges, with a lot of really good players in a tough environment on the road. So if we're worried about last week or patting ourselves in the back and all that bull crap, we're in for a tough day. So we got to have a mature mindset of put that away. Take what you take from tape, learn, get better, and focus on this new task at hand.
With all the talk about the environment, I know you do as much as you can to prepare guys for a road game, but this is a thing where you don't necessarily know how a guy's going to react until he's out there.
Again, I think there's some guys on our team that are very mature, that have handled road environments before, and I look for those guys to be leaders and bring the other guys along. But we got a lot of new guys on our team. And so this is the first time that this team has gone on the road. And so we need the older guys and our coaching staff to make sure that we're communicating the standard and upholding the standard of what we like to do on the road, how we go about our business. And we need those other guys to get on board with that, which I don't sense that's going to be an issue. But, anytime you're traveling with new guys, I think about the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of new guys, new faces on that side of the ball that are traveling for the first time. Not so much on offense, obviously Nate and Cody, but for the most part, and Tyler, but for the most part, the offense has stayed consistent with what we've had in the past. But the defense side of the ball's got a lot of new guys that we're going to have to get accustomed to how we do it.
Now, one other intriguing matchup here out in the desert, Shane, Mississippi State going on the road to play Arizona. We're very high on Mississippi State. They should cruise through this game. I looked up the coach there at Arizona, Jed Fish, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He's won, I believe, 2 games at home during his career. So this is not some juggernaut Arizona program. But their quarterback did have a little bit of a breakout performance. This is a guy that Mike Leach recruited at Washington State. His name's Jaden DeLora. 299 passing yards, 4 touchdowns in the opener. So we could be getting in a little bit of a shootout-style game. But
yeah,
check this out. The opponent, they played San Diego State, Shane. Their quarterback, 7 of 16 for 62 yards and a touchdown. This ain't who you're facing this week, brother. You're facing Will Rogers, red-hot offense.
Yes.
He's going to have 62 yards per drive against this Arizona defense. It's just a completely different animal. So I think there is a little bit of hype I'm seeing with this Arizona, with this new quarterback and all that. But to me, Shane, that's a factor of playing such a weak opponent right out the gate. And I think if Mississippi State plays like they're capable of, they should run this Arizona team off the field.
Mike, we're about 20 minutes into this show, and I just realized this is not a pick'em. I was like, why is he not asking me the score? I was like, why would we not?
I didn't even want to say it, Shay, but I do it when you were like, what, are we picking the score? I was like, no, that's tomorrow.
God. That's tomorrow, man. That's my COVID brain working right there, man. So sorry about that. Everybody's probably listening to me like, what a damn idiot, Oh, I'm sorry, man. So, well, that makes it easier because I don't have to ruin it. But I will say I'm obviously, I'm very high on Mississippi State.
Yeah.
I think last week we got a glimpse of how good this team could be. Mm-hmm. We're going to hear Coach talk a little bit about Will being upset, and I like that, man. Upset that things didn't go right, that they didn't score 50 points. That's the kind of quarterback mentality I want there with Mississippi State and the Pirates offense. So going out west, this is big for for the school. This is big for the team, but I think it's just big for them to tune up and get ready for SEC play, because I think after this week, people are going to really start taking a hard look at what Will's able to do down there with the Bulldogs.
We always talk about this offense because it's Mike Leach and Will Rogers and all the star receivers, but I love the fact that you pointed out, they had Memphis at like 29 total yards at halftime. So for me, this weekend, Shane, it's not about the offense because we know what we're getting. It's how this defense manages this quarterback that apparently is pretty good, because I was singing the praises of the Memphis quarterback last week, and they shut his ass down. So I look forward to them shutting this guy down too. You know what?
Absolutely. And this is a team that we expected hit the ground running, and they did so week 1. It wasn't flawless game, and that's why we got some of these comments that you're about to hear. But what they do from week 1 to week 2, if this team is going to be an absolute machine going into SEC play. So I just love it. I mean, if you're a Bulldog fan, you're on cloud 9 right now, in my opinion.
Coach, after you left the other night, after your post-game comments, Will came in here, and he was, you could tell, even despite the fact he'd had a big game, he was still a little bit unsatisfied and seemed a little bit aggravated himself that he could have done some things better. Have you seen that kind of, I guess, was a little bit like your personality? Have you kind of seen that around in the roster, not just out of Will, but some of these guys now that they've been in your system and been under you for 2 or 3 years now?
That's kind of hard for me to gauge, really. But he is a competitive guy, and he's he works an awful lot and awfully hard when people aren't around. And I think that how good of a player you are, or even a coach you are, is kind of dictated by what you're doing when nobody's around, when nobody's looking, and that type of thing. And I think Will's a really good example of a guy that's really productive with time like that. And I think that him and his leadership's kind of rubbing off on the locker room, like Q also, LaQuinston as well. And I think we're getting a number of guys like that. Hopefully that helps generate a lot of improvement.
All right, last thing, Shay, before we get to these interviews, I just thought this was great. I mean, it's like a mutual admiration club. Shane Beamer, Sam Pittman, they both coached together on Kirby Smart's initial staff down there at Georgia. Now, of course, obviously head coaches going head-to-head this weekend. Shane Beamer shared the story earlier this week of Sam Pittman stealing away Robert Quinn out from under him when he was at Virginia Tech. And then Sam Pittman, I thought it was hilarious. He was asked about that. So he kind of gave his side to the story. I just thought this was too good not to share.
Ton of respect for Sam. Even before we coached together at Georgia, always knew or heard the name Sam Pittman going back to when I was here at Carolina, and we were recruiting Robert Quinn from Fort Dorchester, and we lost him to North Carolina, and the guy recruiting him was Sam Pittman. I remember thinking, how in the heck did the offensive line coach at North Carolina just get Robert Quinn to come to Chapel Hill? And he did. So knew of him then, and then got the opportunity to work with him.
I can't remember the lineman's name, but I guess yesterday Shane Beamer mentioned the first time he was aware of you were in North Carolina and signed some offensive lineman. I think he would have been at Virginia Tech, and it was like, how did North Carolina get that guy? And I guess that
Oh no, that was a defensive lineman. I think that's probably why he was. We signed Robert Quinn, who was a 17th pick, great guy and great player at North Carolina. Played forever. I don't know if he's still playing or not, but he played up to last year. I don't know if he's still on the roster, but he was a defensive end. And I'll be honest, I don't know how we got him either. I can give you a story if you want it.
Yeah, sure. Your stories are always good.
Well, we got to work that morning of signing day, 6 a.m. in the morning. And Coach Butch Davis said, "Have you talked to Quinn yet?" I said, "No, Coach, I talked to him last night and he still didn't know what he was going to do." And he said, "Well, call him." I said, "Well, Coach, it's 6 o'clock in the morning." He said, "Call him." And so I texted him and all those kind of things. And then his mother, and I text his mama, and his mother texts back, and she said, you're going to be excited here in a little bit, and she kind of let the cat out of the bag, and then later on that day, Rob decided he was going to be a Tar Heel, and Rob had told, bless his heart, rest his soul, John Blake, because John Blake was a D-line coach at the time, and Blake had went in there because Alabama was recruiting him hard, and Blake said, "You're going to go to Alabama and their running back coach is recruiting you?" And Quinn looked right at me. He said, "Well, if I go to North Carolina, the whole line coach is recruiting me there, And Blake had a huge ego. It crushed him, But anyway, we were fortunate enough to get Rob, and I think Shane was at South Carolina at the time, maybe. And Robert was from South Carolina.
So. God, Mike, one day I hope we're big enough, like later in life when these coaches have hung it up, and we're sitting there campfire with Coach O, Sam Pittman, Will Muschamp, some of these guys.
Yeah.
I would just love to just hear the stories. Just sit back, be a fly on the wall, and just listen. Like, they're coming out with these stories with Robert Quinn, which I think is a great one. But what about the stories we're not hearing? I think after a couple cold beers, we'd finally get some tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? One of these days it's going to happen, Mike.
All right, brother, let's kick it over to our interview. John Nabors, 103.7 The Buzz, host of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, we're pleased to once again be joined by the man, John Nabors. Of course, you know him, host of the Out of Bounds 103.7 The Buzz and the outstanding Locked On Hogs podcast, which is blowing up on YouTube. I was just giving them credit for it. John, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. It's good to be on with you.
Yeah, so, hey, anticipation for this football season was through the roof there in Fayetteville. Obviously, that's why your channel's blowing up, because these fans are dying to get all the Razorback content they can get their hands on. What did you think of the opener against Cincinnati? Because I've been pumping up Arkansas all off season, and I'm curious to know what you think. I was slightly disappointed, but hell, I mean, they won the game, and I thought they played an average game, and they beat a good opponent. So what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I can kind of see the same thing you did. I was expecting a little bit more, but I don't think it was necessarily because I felt like Arkansas played like trash. I just think that Cincinnati is that good of a football team. Like, they are a good program. Luke Fickell's a great coach. And I tried to look at from the physicality perspective, because I feel like that's always kind of the biggest difference between SEC teams and group of 5 teams, just the physicality. And, when you play even Texas last year, when Arkansas beat them, Arkansas, you could tell they were much more physical. They were an SEC team against a Big 12 team. But Cincinnati really did a good job of matching that physicality, defensively, offensively. And even Sam Pittman talked about that in his post-game press conference. And even Trey Knox, who had a great game, came on our radio station, and he's like, that was an SEC team. He's like, we see that physicality from some SEC teams, but there's some that aren't even that physical. So I just think that it was a really good game by Cincinnati. I think that there's definitely some things that Arkansas needs to improve on. The cornerback situation was pretty inconsistent. Hudson Clark and Dwight McLaughlin were kind of the best guys, but they still, weren't amazing. And of course, the injuries to Jalen Catalon and Miles Slusher, two defensive backs, two of the best defensive backs. Don't know the extent of those injuries, but when those guys went out, it made a big difference. So I was just a little concerned with the secondary because of those facts, but I thought the linebackers played well. I think the D line actually played better than what I thought they were going to, because that was a big question mark. And I really think the offense as a whole is going to be even better than what they were last year. You got the wide receivers, Trey Knox, I mentioned, stepping up as tight end. The offensive line was good. KJ is awesome. Rocket Sanders had a 100-yard game. So I think that there's a lot to be excited about, but I think last weekend was definitely a game of Cincinnati just being a really good football team that's probably going to win double-digit games this season once again.
Yeah, I'm glad you hit on the Arkansas offense, because I wanted to ask you, I really thought Cincinnati had a good game plan. They came out, they executed early. Arkansas, they scored the touchdown right before half. That was an impressive one. But what's the ceiling for this Arkansas offense? Because, again, I thought they played average. Maybe that's a little too harsh, because I was just so high on Arkansas. But even that, over 200 passing, over 200 rushing, you're going to win every ball game that you do that, as long as you're not turning the ball over. So what is the ceiling for this offense with KJ Jefferson that, he deserves to be in the Heisman conversation, in my opinion?
Well, I think the ceiling is going to be a year where last year they were pretty much as balanced as you could get. They threw for a little over 2,500 yards and they rushed for a little over 2,500 yards. I mean, that's balance right there. So I think that they can even take that to a next step. Now, I think the defenses they're going to be facing this year may be tougher than some of them they faced last year. They don't have to face Georgia, which is nice. So there's that. But it'll just depend on the matchups. But I just feel like when everybody's healthy, you have an offensive line that's one of the best in the SEC. You have a wide receiver group of specifically Matt Landers, Jaden Hazelwood, and Ketron Jackson that are all big-bodied, perfectly able wide receivers that are all SEC caliber type guys. And now you have the emergence of Trey Knox at the tight end position, which they haven't had a tight end since Sam Pittman's been there that stepped up. And you see what he's capable of. And then at running backs, we mentioned Rocket Sanders. Dominic Johnson, who was awesome last year, he's been hurt, so he didn't even play. They're expecting him to be back soon. So I just feel like there's not really a weakness on this offense. Now, does that mean they're going to put up 45 points a game? No, I just don't know if they're set up that way. It'd be great. But I just think that if a team is able to stop them running, they're going to throw it. If they're able to stop them passing, they're going to run it. Like they have so many weapons and so many different elements. And they got a great quarterback in KJ Jefferson and a great offensive coordinator in Kendall Briles. I just don't see offense in any game this year being the reason why Arkansas loses a game.
Yeah, and I don't know if you remember this, John, but it was this time a year ago. I had you on the show. We were talking the Texas game, and you said, keep your eye on this kid, Rocket Sanders, who you just referenced. He had a heck of a game in the opener against Cincinnati. He, was a standout in that Texas game too. But by the end of this season, do you think around the SEC, Rocket Sanders will have a reputation as being one of the best 2 or 3 running backs in the conference?
I do. I really do, because he was a true freshman last year, and you saw those kind of plays that he made, that whether it's against Texas or against Ole Miss or whoever, where you're like, wow, you can see the upside of this guy. And now that he's had that year of off season, he's not a freshman anymore. He's a sophomore. He's 6'3", about 235, 240 pounds. He's got elite speed. He's like a bowling ball. Like, he doesn't go down very easily. As long as he stays healthy, I think that he could be all SEC caliber by the end of the season, which is saying something, because there's a lot of good running backs in this league. But just the way that the offense is set up, and Sam Pittman has made it clear that Rocket Sanders is the number 1 running back. He's going to get the load, even though guys like A.J. Green, Dominic Johnson, Rashad Dabinian, the freshman, they're going to get some carries. Rocket's the guy. And so as long as you're going to have an offense with KJ running that RPO, you're going to have that offensive line in front of them, I could see, honestly, Rocket running for over 100 yards in most games this year. I think he's a 1,000-yard rusher for sure. And I think that having a weapon like him, because he's also, people don't know this, out of high school, he played wide receiver. And so he has that element to his game to where he can play running back, but if you need to toss it to him, he's got great hands. He knows the elements of getting on the outside too. So I think he's going to be one of the premier running backs when it's all said and done at the end of the season, at least in the SEC.
And which newcomer for Arkansas impressed you the most in the opener, be it a transfer or a freshman or whatever?
See, they had a few of them stand out. Drew Sanders, he's been my guy I've been really high on. He had 2 sacks in this game, and you can see the speed and the athleticism that he has coming off the edge. I really liked what we saw from him. And also Jaden Hazelwood. He caught that great touchdown pass from KJ, and he had 3 guys around him. He ducked down just in time and got into the end zone. And so that's what you look for. So those 2 guys were good. Even Matt Landers had some, you could see some potential there too. But another guy is Jordan Dominic, who's actually the all-SEC defensive lineman of the week for that strip sack that he had, where not only did he sack the quarterback, but he also got the fumble. And he had a great game. And people forget that he's a transfer. So honestly, most of the best players and best plays from Arkansas were all from transfers on Saturday. But I would have to say either Drew Sanders or Jaden Hazelwood are the ones that probably look the best.
How big of a concern is it with the secondary? You mentioned it there. Not the perfect debut there against Cincinnati. And, of course, we don't know Jalen Cattle and Miles Slusher if they're even going to play here against South Carolina, which Spencer Rattler, and they got some new weapons to work with. How big of a concern is that going into this game?
Into this game, it's probably going to get me in trouble. But into this game, I don't think it's an issue, because I don't see it as Spencer Rattler. I know that you got to respect him as a team. You got to respect him as a player. But that offensive line for South Carolina is not good. It's not. And Arkansas's defensive line is improved from last year. It's not perfect, but it's improved. And I think that Spencer Rattler is going to be on the run a lot in this game in Fayetteville. And I just don't see him causing some problems for the secondary for Arkansas. Now, you still got to respect him. He gets out on the run. He can make some plays. But I think that as long as you have Hudson Clark and Dwight McLaughlin out there, doing their thing, and I know that they're going to get guys like Simeon Blair at the safety position, get him some run too. You have enough there to still be okay. Now, if you're going up against Bama or Ole Miss, one of these teams that has an electric offense, then I would be a little bit more concerned. But I feel like in this game, if Catalan and Slusher can't go, which it doesn't look like they're going to, I still feel like Arkansas has enough weapons defensively to keep South Carolina and keep Spencer Rattler in check.
Now, I know this is something you just hit on your most recent show. Go check it out if you haven't already. But the importance of this game for Arkansas's overall season, hell, we know what the gauntlet the West is. Arkansas, they just can't afford to lose to an East team if they're going to have any dream of getting to Atlanta, can they?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the thing where Arkansas has a great home schedule this year. They have Bama, LSU, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all at home. They have Cincinnati at home, like as we saw them just play. Like, they have some of their toughest games besides maybe BYU and Mississippi State. Those games are on the road, but all their toughest games are at home. And that's great, but South Carolina is a team that you're better than, and you have them at home. So you need to win that. You don't want to be getting behind the 8 ball where suddenly now it's like, okay, we got to make up for that loss somewhere on the schedule. And there's not a whole lot of opportunities because I think Ole Miss is a better team than South Carolina. I think for sure Bama, BYU, Auburn may be better than them. We'll see. LSU, they're a disaster. So who knows what the crap they're going to be looking like by the time November comes around. But overall, I just feel like this is a game where you're at home. It is an 11 a.m. game. That's one thing, but it's an extremely winnable game that you're a better team than. So go out and prove it. If you can't do that, I don't know if there's enough time or enough games to make up for it, but you should be able to beat all the teams that you're better than this season, and especially when you have them at home, which you are better than South Carolina, and that game is at home.
Yeah, speaking of the game being at home, we're seeing Pittman here. He's rallying the troops, got to show up, got to be loud, got to be intimidating. He mentions time and time again, he mentions that trip to Georgia, even though that was a noon game. Those fans in Athens were at an 11. What type of environment are you anticipating Razorback Stadium here on Saturday? Is it going to be a hostile environment?
Oh yeah, I think so. I know it's 11 a.m. and it's the sun was really bad last weekend in Fayetteville, like 3:00 game or 2:30 game. People in the sun for the most part. It was upper 80s, so it was warm. But this weekend's going to be a little cooler, but you're going to be in the sun the entire time because it's an 11 a.m. game. But the environment will be there because it's still an SEC team. It's an SEC game. The weather is going to be beautiful. I think at kickoff it's going to be like 78 degrees. So I mean, it's going to be a beautiful day. And fans are just they're pumped, man. They're hyped for this team. I'm sure you've seen it on your podcast from Razorback fans, just the excitement that they have. And so if it's a big game, especially, it's going to be hostile. And people want this game to start off the right way. They want the edge to get there early. And so I think it'll be there. And it's funny you bring up that Georgia game because I agree with Sam Pittman, but I'm also like, okay, Coach Pitt, that was a top 10 matchup with College Game Day being there too. Like it was a much bigger deal. Like if this was Alabama at 11 a.m. and College Game Day was here, yeah, it wouldn't even be a question. But I still think it'll be solid just because it is an SEC opponent. Fans are excited. It's going to be a beautiful day. And with that north end zone and closing that they had over the past few years, it's pretty hostile there. It gets very loud as we saw against Cincinnati in that game too.
So what's the path for Arkansas to win this football game? What's got to happen on Saturday?
Well, I kind of alluded to it. You got to get pressure on Spencer Rattler. Like their offensive line is not good at South Carolina. Your defensive line is improved. You got a great pass rusher in Drew Sanders. Get after Spencer Rattler. You get after him. You pressure him into making mistakes. He threw 2 picks last Saturday. I'm thinking that if they can do that same type of thing, get him rattled and no pun intended and end up throwing some picks, that's going to be the difference in here. You cannot let him sit back there though, because he is still a good quarterback. He's not, I don't think he's as great as what everyone makes him out to be, but he still is a good quarterback. If he just sits back there and waits with no pressure, he's going to beat you with it. So if you can get pressure on him, have him cost them some mistakes, I think that'll be great for Arkansas. And then offensively, establishing that run. Like that's something that was tough to do against Cincinnati because they were physical up front, especially on the defensive line. So I think South Carolina is still a physical team, but not as much. If you can get Rocket to get another 100 yards, you can get KJ to that 75 to 100-yard game and just keep them honest. I think that physicality will really wear down South Carolina later in the game. So you do those two things, I think Arkansas wins this game easily.
All right, moment of truth, John. Can I nail you down to a prediction for this game? Who you got a score prediction or anything like that?
Yeah, I think Arkansas wins. I think the last time I checked, they were an 8.5-point favorite in this game. So I still think Arkansas wins. I think it'll be again, not trying to be disrespectful. It'll be an easier game for them than last weekend because it was just I felt that good about Cincinnati and how good they were. So I think Arkansas wins. I think they win by multiple possessions. I think it may be close at times, but Arkansas is never in danger of losing it. So I say Arkansas wins this game. Final score 38-24. Take care of business, and they're 2-0 heading into Missouri State next weekend.
All right. Thank you so much, John. Outstanding stuff. Before you leave, tell the audience what's the best way to find all your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on all forms of social media, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, Buzz John Nabors, Nabors. You can find all that stuff there. Also subscribe to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast on YouTube, especially as it's been growing rapidly. You can do it there or wherever podcasts are found for all your Razorback content. It's the best way to check it out. And yeah, we have some fun. I talk trash. I don't try to make anyone too mad, but just know it's all in fun. And I'm a Razorback fan. I haven't been able to talk trash in a while, so it's always a good time on social media. So you can check me out on those platforms.
Oh, one more thing I forgot.
Yeah.
So obviously Nabors. You watched the Sunday night game. It was Nabors for LSU. It was blowing the damn game for them. What was that? Any relation?
Surprisingly, no, if you can believe it. Yeah, we don't know family heritage here, but it is funny because my last name is spelled different from how Nabors is actually spelled. Like your next door neighbor, it's Neighbors. Well, mine's Nabors. So I'm like, man, mine's dumb. Who would spell their name like that? And then I see this guy from LSU. It's Nabers. So I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, what? It's like, how many different spellings of Neighbors does there need to be? But yeah, when I saw him muff those 2 punts, I'm like, man, you're putting shame on the Neighbor's name, man. You're putting shame on it. So yeah, that was a pretty funny thing, especially hearing Joe Tessitore say Neighbors all the time. I'm like, kept kind of looking up and seeing, oh yeah, he's talking about him. So yeah, that was a pretty cool thing, but he needs to catch those punts a little bit easier and stop shaming the name.
All right, Shane. So hey, John, appreciate him hopping on the line. He's picking the Arkansas Razorbacks. No surprise. We're 3 for 3, Shane, for having homers on the show and making homer picks. So I'm curious to see what our buddy JC Shurburtt does an outstanding job with the Big Spur, the go-to South Carolina website, and his show Inside the Gamecocks. If you're not checking that out already, you got to check it out. Let's kick it over to our interview with JC. All right, we're pleased to be once again joined by JC Shurburtt, owner of the Big Spur and host of Inside the Gamecocks. You got to check it out. One of my favorite shows on YouTube. And don't forget, he's got the JC and Morgan College Football podcast with my man Mike Morgan, another favorite of the show. JC, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's no problem, Mike. It's always great catching up with you, buddy.
Yeah. So, hey, so much hype, so much anticipation for this Gamecock team heading into the season. What was your just overall thoughts on the Gamecocks in the opener? And hell, have you ever seen the Gamecocks block 2 punts and return for a touchdown in a single game before?
I have, but it's been 22 years. I'll tell you this story. It was the year 2000. Lou Holtz was the coach at Carolina, and they had lost every game the year before. And the 2000 season, they beat Georgia. They beat Mississippi State on an amazing pass by a backup quarterback. Took Tennessee to the wire. Got down to the game against Florida, and that wasn't one of Florida's best teams Spurrier had. The Gamecocks go to the Swamp, and had they won, they'd have won the SEC East. The standings were kind of like that. Carolina, I think, had 2 losses in the league. Florida had 1. And Derek Watson and Brian Scott both blocked punts for touchdowns in the first half. Gamecocks were up 21-3, and Spurrier, as he was known to do, he's like, well, shoot, we're just not going to punt. We're just gonna call this little thing where we go around the end. So he runs a fake punt. South Carolina had a good defense. Charlie Strong was their D coordinator that year. Carolina had a good defense. They run this fake punt, and they score right after that. And then they score again right before the half, where a ball hits a lineman the Florida lineman in his helmet, bounces up. I think Jabbar Gaffney ran under it and caught it for a touchdown. Florida ends up winning 41-21. And they, of course, go on to Atlanta, and Lou takes his team to Outback Bowl that year. But it was, I remember it happening early in that game, but it happened late Saturday night. And, the good thing about it happening this year is it's in the opener. I think it's going to make teams sort of pay close attention and spend time on South Carolina special teams during practice, which, of course, with only 20 hours, that cuts into your other prep time. And I was happy for the players involved. Rashad Amos returned 1 for a touchdown. He's a backup running back that had a redshirt last year. Instead of transferring like a lot of people thought he was going to do, he stuck with it. He's going to be a really good player for Carolina. And then DQ Smith, the freshman safety, was a guy that they were going to gray shirt in recruiting until they had enough space to bring him in. He's a local kid, played high school quarterback at Spring Valley, true freshman, getting playing time at safety, on the punt team, whatever. And so, just happy for the players because I know anytime you work that hard, maybe you're not playing as much on offense or defense, but you get out there and you get in that end zone, man, it's a good feeling. And I think that makes the entire team feel good. And certainly for South Carolina, it wasn't just that. They had 250-plus yard field goals. Their punter had a 79-yard punt. They faked a field goal for a first down that set up a touchdown. I mean, they were pretty active on special teams on Saturday night, and that was good to see, along with the defense. Offense, that still remains a question mark. I think they got more pieces in place this year, but it just seemed a little disjointed on Saturday night, and that's, of course, a concern heading into Fayetteville.
Yeah, and what were your thoughts on Spencer Rattler? Again, so much hype with him. I thought he was a little inconsistent. Threw the 2 interceptions. One hit his receiver in the hands, so maybe that's not quite on Rattler. The other one, I think he kind of forced it. But at the same time, I mean, he was running for his life a lot of that game. He was making plays with his feet, and he was keeping the possession alive with his feet, looking downfield. So I'm not sitting here saying he was terrible or anything. Just I think kind of inconsistent would be the word I would use. What about you?
Yeah, I think inconsistent. I think there were times where a lot of people are criticizing him for not standing in the pocket for a long time. And I get that, because there were times he was supposed to. And I get that, if depending on who's doing the criticizing, it kind of depends on like my opinion of their criticism, because, former quarterbacks and folks like that, I see exactly why they want him to do it. Just your average Joe yelling and saying he had guys open when he didn't. I'm not into that, but he, I think at times, Mike, when you're in a game like that where you're just not getting any blocking, and I'm talking, it wasn't just the offensive line. They didn't get good blocking on the perimeter from the receivers. The backs didn't block particularly well. The tight ends didn't block particularly well. Sometimes your quarterback has to go make plays. And so the positive of it is he went and made plays, and he extended drives and got them in a position. They would have lost that game had it not been for Spencer Rattler, in my opinion. I think block punts aside, you don't get anything on offense at all. I think that's going to give Georgia State a lot more life there at the end of the game to go beat you. And so I think he's only going to get better. I think, when you look at the receivers South Carolina has this year, it's night and day better than what it was. They've got 2 good tight ends. They got backs. They just need to block. And, and like I said, it's not just the line. And I know Georgia State has a different type of scheme. I mean, Georgia State did the same type of thing to Tennessee when they upset them. They did the same type of thing to Auburn when they almost upset them, where they're just and that Tennessee offensive line that year ended up being really good. They struggled at the beginning, though, with that. And so, lots of teams have struggled with the style of defense Georgia State plays. And I think that's what kind of gives you hope if you're the Gamecocks is, well, maybe this was just a tough first game where they gave you fits and all you wanted, and things will kind of smooth out and get better. That's the hope. But, this unit struggled last year up front and all that good stuff. So it's kind of you asked me how Gamecock fans feel. They're kind of a little apprehensive now because of the offensive struggles, but still pretty hopeful for this season.
Yeah, so I really wanted to ask you about that. The offensive line, South Carolina, if you look at their average distance to a first down on third down, it was 9.8 yards against Georgia State. So they really struggled in those early down situations, didn't convert a lot of those third downs, which no offense is going to convert a lot of third downs when you're facing third and 9.8. But it sounds like it's an overall issue. Maybe you're not putting all the blame on the offensive line, but how big of a concern is that going into the Arkansas game, which we all got a lot of respect for Barry Odom and what he's capable of doing on that defensive side?
Sure, you're getting that against Arkansas. Barry Odom's going to be able to dial up just about anything he wants. South Carolina has to get better on early downs. I don't know if maybe, at times that was Rattler maybe going further down the field than he should, missing open underneath guys. Certainly the run game did not get enough of a push to set up that second and less than 5 or third and short, where the advantage in play calling goes to the offense, that kind of thing. But yeah, it was unacceptable. I mean, to be honest, in terms of the goals South Carolina has as a team this year, you can't have that. You can have that in one game, but if it's consistently like that all year, you're going to struggle, especially against a good team like the Razorbacks. I mean, out there, it's You getting 3rd and 9.8 all the time, Michael, they're going to be calling the Hogs quite a bit on you. And it's going to get loud and going to give their defense a lot of motivation to go disrupt your money down, so to speak. So I think that's important. Early down success heading into the game on Saturday and really for the rest of the year.
And one thing I really loved in the opener from the Gamecocks, JC, was Jaheim Bell, the way they manufactured touches for him out of the backfield. I believe even on one of the 2-point conversions, he was like a fullback right up the gut and scored. I imagine you had to love that. And it's almost like, he gets sometimes that Debo Samuel comparison. Maybe that's not fair because Debo was arguably the best skill position player in the NFL last year, but you got to love the fact that they're getting very creative to get Bell more touches this fall. And he certainly is going to be an X factor in this game.
Absolutely. And he's not as fast as Debo probably, if they raced, but he's bigger. He's 6'3", 230. He kind of reminds me also of a guy named Jalen Samuels who played for NC State back in 2017. The Wolfpack sort of used him a lot like the Gamecocks are using Jaheim. Would I've liked to have seen him do a little more in the vertical passing game? Certainly. I think he could be a weapon there, as we saw against North Carolina last year. Downfield throws, things like that. But the same thing holds true for Juice Wells at receiver. He was kind of an underneath guy. But I like the plan for Jaheim. I really think that he's a guy that could also help Michael. If you're having trouble perimeter blocking, he can slide out to receiver and you throw a little bubble and he can block for you. Because he's good at that. So I like the way they used him. I like the way they used Marshawn Lloyd. I did like some of the 5 wide empty stuff and the tempo they attempted to run. Jalen Brooks had a really good game, and that guy, he came from Wingate 2 years ago, right? And and after the game that I was like, I don't ever want to hear about anybody coming from Wingate again, and like it's a negative, he was up and down for 2 years and missed half of last season because of a suspension, but he's back and athletically he's always belonged. And it looks like he's learned to get better and catch the football consistently. And boy, he made some outstanding catches. So playing like a man with his hair on fire, really. And so I think South Carolina has some pieces. I just, in football, you have to put it all together or it's just pieces, like we all know. And so they're hopeful that they can do that this weekend. But I did, one of the few positives I did take from the offense was, hey, they're going to make an effort to move Jaheim around just like we were told and, get him the ball in various ways because he's always kind of a big play waiting to happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Jalen Brooks because I was going to ask you that. He's now, I know it's just one game, but he's your leading receiver. Did you see that coming? And do you think he can keep that going, or was this maybe more of a one-off here?
I don't think it's a one-off, Michael. I think sometimes players develop at different rates. I think when he's had some things happen, right? So he comes in from Wingate, during a year in 2020 where South Carolina, you can ask if you ever interview Mike Bobo, you can ask him about this. They basically had one receiver, Shi Smith. That's it. And Jalen kind of was a late addition, went through the NCAA appeals process. It was game 5 by the time he got eligible. It was LSU in Baton Rouge. And I'll never forget, he comes off the line. He's supposed to run a slant and he gets jammed, man. And it's a pick 6 or at least a pick down to about the 1 yard line because he couldn't get off the line. Well, he kept playing and trying and made some nice, tough catches as the season went on, made some nice, tough catches at times early last year, also dropped some balls. He didn't drop anything the other night. So I think that's that confidence and that athleticism sort of matching his skill set as a player. In other words, he's never looked like, even when he couldn't get off the line, I think it just surprised him. He's never looked like athletically he didn't belong in the SEC. He just hasn't performed like an SEC level receiver. Well, I thought that Saturday night he certainly did. And, caught one little pass, even, the acrobatic long passes were great, but he caught one and then ran for about 16 yards and looked like his hair was on fire. So that's what you want is guys that bring that passion, that refusal to yield, because also go out there and execute and keep their head about them and make tough catches and concentrate and things of that nature at that position. So I think he's here to stay. You know, I'm looking for Josh Vann to make a comeback this week because, you know, I think Brooks outplayed him, Wells outplayed him, you know, some other guys have outplayed him. So, you know, Vann was a leading receiver last year, so he really needs to come on this weekend, and so they can have even more options for Spencer Rattler to throw to.
And what were your thoughts overall on Clayton White's defense? You know, they got the rushing total was not ideal. They got gashed for a couple big runs, but hey, Georgia State had 15 drives. 7 of them were 3-and-outs. The quarterback for Georgia State finished his last 17 passes. He only completed 1 of them, so we got to credit the secondary there for getting the job done. What's your level of confidence that they can kind of – you're not going to stop Arkansas on the ground because they're so damn good on the ground, but can you limit them? What's your confidence level that South Carolina can do that?
I think they can. You know, it's going to reverse a trend if they do, because South Carolina, you know, I wrote an article today on the Big Spur that, you know, they've kind of struggled on the road the last 3 years. And the common thread is they haven't played good defense on the road at all, even last year. And that's in the SEC, of course. But South Carolina has a defense last year playing Florida and Emory Jones and playing North Carolina and Sam Howell. Now, those are different guys. KJ Jefferson is a unique guy, right? He's different. But still, there's that dual threat guy where you got to limit the quarterback run game. I thought Carolina did a good job of that the other night against Georgia State. I thought most of Georgia State's damage was done early and late, and you always want that, right? So, you know, I do think, you know, looking at those two games schematically, you know, I don't know if you can scheme them up exactly alike, but Longo's offense kind of similar to Bryles. Longo's at North Carolina. So, you know, the short answer is yes, they're capable. And not just based on last year, but based on improved personnel, I think there's a better chance for that defense to go have a big time outing on the road, which you have to do to win on the road in the SEC. You have to play defense. You know, you can win a shootout every now and then if you're playing a team like you that doesn't play defense, but it's very difficult. And the reason is they're improved at linebacker. You know, Muhammad Kaba, a former 4-star recruit out of North Carolina who has kind of rebounded from an injury and gotten better and better and better. He basically took the starting linebacker's job this offseason. Carolina had 2 returning starters. He took one of them. And then a kid, Debo Williams, who they also got out of the transfer portal from Delaware. As soon as Shane Beamer got to South Carolina, he's Marshawn Lloyd's friend. He showed a lot of quickness and instincts. Brad Johnson played pretty well the other night. Sherrod Green didn't even play. I think he had a little injury or something, so he'll be back out there. And Sam Pittman, in his press conference this week for Arkansas, mentioned, you know, it would be shocking to any South Carolina person last year for somebody to say this, that, hey, they've got great linebackers. And anytime you got great linebackers, you got a chance to have a great defense. And for Sam Pittman to notice that, I think it's a testament to the improvement at that spot. And so, you know, hey, that's a little bit, you feel a little bit better taking this group out there than maybe you would have last year where you were speed deficient at linebacker and really kind of had to do some things in the front 7 smoke and mirrors wise. I think this year South Carolina is much better across the front 4 and in the front 7 in general.
All right, last thing for you, JC. What is the path for South Carolina to go on the road and get a win in Razorback Stadium? And what's your prediction for the game?
Well, I think for South Carolina to win, you know, they're going to have to find some kind of way to scratch out a run game. You know, whether that's is Christian Beal Smith more suited now that he's healthy to come in and do some things? Can they get Lloyd loose? Can they get McDowell on the edge? Can Bell do some things? Some kind of run game to keep the Hogs defense honest. And then I think Arkansas, you know, they do have some injuries in the secondary, man, but, you know, and Catalan may not play, and he's elite, as we all know, but his backup's Latavius Brini, who started, 12 games at Georgia last year on that defense. You know, how much of a drop-off are they really going to have? I did notice, though, even when healthy, Cincinnati had some success throwing the ball down the field against them. So if South Carolina can pass protect and give Rattler time, or if Rattler's able to scramble and make plays downfield and the receivers play well, avoid turnovers, get some kind of running game, I think the offense can go out there and compete. And then, as far as Carolina's defense goes, you've got to play the run well. You can't let Jefferson beat you. I think South Carolina maybe, at least for the beginning of the game, almost served to go, man up coverage on some of these guys that they have, because you just don't want Jefferson and Rocket Sanders to line up and start gashing you, and then they're going to go to the perimeter and hit Knox or somebody out there, and it's the Kendall Browse offense. And so I don't know that the Gamecocks don't maybe cover one-on-one and stack the box just to keep them from running if they have to do that. If not, then if they can stop them as is, then I think South Carolina can be successful. As far as what I think, that's the key to the game for the Gamecocks. As far as how I see it, just predicting it, right now, Michael, I think, and look, things can change in the blink of an eye in college football, right? On one Saturday, your whole perception can change. But you got to live in the now, I think, when you're predicting things. Otherwise, you just, always predict your team to win. That doesn't do anybody any good. I think these two programs are at two different spots. I think Arkansas even Pittman has a year ahead of Beamer. He's got a year where he's bit worth of building before Beamer. I think he took over a much worse situation, but he's had a year. It's his third year. Arkansas is 10-4 in their last 14 games. They've beaten Penn State, Cincinnati, Texas A&M, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri. I mean, you name it. Like, they've consistently beaten good teams. They lost by a touchdown at Bama last year. They did get boat raced by Georgia, had an inexplicable loss to Auburn, and then lost in a shootout to Ole Miss, right? This is not a rebuilding program anymore. This is a good, solid program. They have identity on both sides of the ball. Like I said, they've beaten some good teams, but very competitive against some others. So the question becomes, is the South Carolina program ready to go out there and pull the upset? I don't think they are, just based on what I've seen so far. So I'd say Hogs win something like 34-21, and it's going to be probably, I'd say, a competitive game for a while. But I think, like Arkansas does a lot of times when they pull away late and get the ground game going, run out the clock, I kind of see it kind of playing out like that. Probably a frustrating day at the ballpark for Gamecock fans. But like I said, things can change in the blink of an eye in college football, but you got to call it like you see it based on what you know right now.
Well, just some outstanding stuff, JC. I really appreciate all this insight. Where's the best place for the audience to find you?
TheBigSpur.com is the home of South Carolina sports on 24/7 Sports. We've been 24/7 now for, this is our 12th year, 12th football season with 24/7. Also, if you want to catch Inside the Gamecocks, the show, or learn more about the JC and Morgan College Football Podcast, JC and Morgan's more for like the general college football audience. Sometimes we don't even talk about South Carolina. Go to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/TheBigSpur. And you can check out all that information right there. Would love it if you went and hit subscribe on that page too, because we have a lot of fun.
Oh, Shane, the streak is snapped. 4 homers, 3
Why
winners.
doesn't he love South Carolina? Huh?
I think this is one, Shane, where you go in and you try to be realistic, and then if your team flips the script, you're like, I knew they had it in them all along. You know what?
That's right. It's like taking the training wheels off your kid's bike, It's like, if he falls down, you're like, well, he's got to learn, If he makes it, he says, just like Daddy taught him,
But I hope everyone appreciated those interviews, and we've got 2 more lined up for the.
Yes.
We're going to have our picks podcast, of course, but we've got a Kentucky guy.
Are we picking now?
And a Florida guy on the next episode, Shane. So 2 more guests, picks. We'll have prize picks of the week. We'll have wagers of the week. We even might have another sponsorship lined up. So, man, this has just been a heck of a week here. We're marching towards week 2 in the SEC. What I'm calling Separation Saturday, Shane, because we got so many crossroads games, so much great football. I cannot wait. How about you?
Me either, man. And keep those koozie pictures coming. I saw one today out of a jacuzzi down in Gainesville, and I said, Mike, you ever feel bad for him koozies? But I couldn't say that because we're not Tennessee, Florida week just yet. But I love the bickering online. I'm seeing the fight between Arkansas and South Carolina.
Yep.
I'm seeing the fight between Kentucky and Florida. Oh my gosh, this Will Levis, Richardson. Who's the best quarterback? Who's the true Heisman?
Yep.
Who's the champ of the East? Man, these guys are going back and forth, and that's what it's all about. So we finally get some SEC play. We got some great interviews today, and we're going to have some great interviews for you tomorrow. And I just love it. We'll keep the content coming. Be sure to jump on the YouTube, subscribe. That thing's really taken off. If you want to see us in video now, if you just be careful, don't get your expectations too high. But I will say it's pretty cool what Mike's doing with the graphics and stuff. He's keeping up with our gambling, so you guys can keep up. Hopefully, make some money this year. But that SEC podcast on YouTube. Send those 5-star reviews so you can get your own koozie so you can watch them during the games.
Yep. And the beautiful thing, Shane, of all this bickering, all this arguing, all this, picking this side, picking that side, we're going to find out Saturday who the real quarterbacks are, who's the best team. And I cannot wait for it. But that is going to do it for this episode, Shane. I appreciate you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right. See you guys. Go Vols.